Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWire video. I'm joined today by Ed McQuiston. He is the Executive Vice President and Chief Commercial Officer of Hyland. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Ed, can we just start at the beginning and can you please tell us about Hyland in 2020 and the latest developments and acquisitions that have happened this year?
Sure. It's been a busy year from a variety of perspectives. That's for sure. From a practical reality standpoint, certainly our business as all has been dealing with COVID and the pandemic globally. But for Hyland, we've been very fortunate that the kind of technology we offer has been in high demand, given all that's going on and as companies really accelerate their digital transformation. And it's kind of, with that in mind that we're fortunate to be in a very strong position. We actually have executed 3 acquisitions this year. At the beginning of the year, we acquired a company called Learning Machine, which offers a blockchain-based digital credentialing solution that, if you think about anything from licensure to, digital diplomas to really any kind of a document or a piece of content that you might exchange that you want to make absolutely certain is authentic, that block cert technology enables that. And we think, we're on the leading edge of what will become a requirement in this trust era of computing that we're going into. In August, we acquired Another Monday. They are an RPA, a robotic process automation vendor. We know that, with 16,000 plus customers, many of which use us for business process management, within those life cycles are lots of opportunities for an enhanced level of automation to be able to, insert those bots to provide more efficiency and frankly, reduce costs for organizations at a time where, that's important to them. And then just a few weeks ago, we closed on the acquisition of Alfresco, a well-known, long-time respected competitor to Hyland, with a great global footprint, especially in the EMEA region. They have, a bit of a different route to market. They've been very strong in the open source world for many years, which is an area that Hyland really hasn't been as known. And so, we really think that their cloud native technology, that open source background creates yet another area of opportunity for Hyland. And of course for Alfresco, they become part of a much larger company that enhances their ability to chase down larger enterprise accounts. And so we really like the combination of those 2 organizations. So as I say, it's been a busy year.
Now, your current and future customers are able to go to the Hyland website and access the Community Live Annual Digital Transformation Conference on demand, as you'd expect in 2020. But Hyland is also hosting an event in Australia on the 11th of November, and you're giving the keynote presentation. So can you please tell us what the Australian conference is about and just a preview of what you'll be speaking about?
Yeah, well, this is one of the opportunities, that comes from the challenges of COVID. We did have our virtual Community Live in September, our first ever full virtual event, and we were able to increase the attendance by over 50% with attendees from 43 countries. In large part because of the virtual nature of the conference. However, time zones are time zones, and the attendance from the APAC region was lighter than the rest, and we wanted an opportunity to share that content from the conference, to be able to localize it a bit for companies based here. And actually, one of the neat things is this is truly our first APAC conference. We've had an Australia summit for a number of years, but this has afforded us, that virtual component to, invite customers from Japan and from Singapore and Southeast Asia as well. And so, this is really an exciting opportunity for us to, reach the whole of the region, whereas, in the past it's been more Australia focused.
Sure. Now, you've mentioned COVID-19 a couple of times, and of course it's the elephant in the room we all know about. But and it's obviously affected everybody, but how's Hyland innovated to deal with this new post-COVID reality that we're still going through while helping your customers globally to do so as well?
Well, I think that really right from the beginning, as Hyland went to being a completely work from home company in really a 2-day span. From when we first said, we were going to do this, we focused really kind of on the concept of helping our customers. And I think one of the most important components of that was really kind of flipping the traditional conversation on its head. And rather than saying to customers, how can we help? Really offering them, here's how we can help. And the distinction is important because I think for most customers, one, it's not their job to know how we can help. That's our job. And I think in the midst of all of the pressures that they were feeling right now, more than ever, the ability to bring those best practices. What are we seeing other companies doing? How are our customers doing this? And because we go to market, in different verticals, segments, being able to share with other hospitals what these hospitals are doing, being able to share with insurance companies what their peers are doing, and really going with a proactive plan, very targeted at the problems of the moment. How are we going to enable their virtual workforce? How are we going to enable them to interact with customers, in a touchless way? How are we going to enable them, with all of these new pressures that they're feeling, that, for today, and then as I'll talk about in my keynote, I know everyone's tired of the cliches, admittedly I am too, but, this whole idea of new normal, one of the things is we're in the new normal. There's nothing normal about any of this right now. The question is, what does the next normal look like? And what are you doing now to prepare for it? Because we believe that our customers can put themselves at a distinct advantage by the choices that they make today in how they're going to address a very different looking set of their customers and how they want to interact going forward. And so, that's really been our focus, is to, one, say, here's best practice that's happening today, but two, say, let's talk about what happens next. And I think the more progressive companies are, engaging with us in those conversations.
One company that I spoke to, they do consumer level backup, and they were talking about how, and they do enterprise stuff as well. They've got lots of different things, but they were talking about how they've voice enabled all of their software so that if the tech had to go in and be an essential worker and be there, if they didn't want to touch it, I mean, you can always put gloves on, but they could just speak to it and it would do certain things. So it's incredible the sort of things that people have come up with to deal with the current situation.
Well, and I think to your point, a year ago, if somebody had gone in and proposed that, that might have been seen as, well, that's a nice to have, but let's be honest, it's not necessary. That dynamic has changed. And, one of the realities is that things that were obstacles in the past of, but that's going to be hard, or that's going to take time, or now it's an imperative. And so it's broken down kind of all of these walls that existed especially in this world of digital transformation. And in many ways, this pandemic has acted as an accelerant to companies, moving forward with those plans.
Well, speaking of cliches, I mean, I'm sure many people watching would have seen the tweet that said, what was the biggest driver of digital transformation and change this year? Was it the CEO, the CTO, or COVID-19? I mean, I think we've all seen that one. It was a C-level executive that nobody wanted to have around, but there you go, the COV.
It's precisely correct.
Yeah.
It's exact. I mean, it is an unfortunate reality.
But we always have to look for the silver linings in any situation. And, even having 50% extra attendees to a conference, I mean, that's 50% more people that are getting the message, that don't have to take a week off to travel to America or Las Vegas or wherever it might be. And everyone can get back to being more productive as we deal with how to be productive when you're working from home and you don't have that water cooler effect anymore. Now, I know if you wanted to say something, go ahead, but otherwise
No, I was just going to say that, I think that, what you're saying is exactly right. And I think that, organizations have been forced to really reimagine, how they operate. And I think in Hyland's case, that the tough thing, as you talk about the silver lining is, having an understanding and an empathy for the fact that we're in a very fortunate position. Being in IT and doing what we do has allowed us to honestly thrive, in the midst of what's happening, but it doesn't, take away from the realities that so many of our customers are dealing with.
Now, I know you spoke about having 3 acquisitions, so you probably have a lot to choose from for my next question, but what are some sort of really impressive customer success stories that you want to mentioned this year, and an alarm has just gone off. We just have to ignore that and keep going.
Okay. Well, I mean, we've had a number of very very exciting wins this year, and I'm going to profile some of those today. But a couple that I'll highlight. So in our healthcare solution set, we have a diagnostic imaging viewer that allows people to view X-rays, CT scans, MRIs. Over the internet through a zero footprint viewer. The reality is that a radiologist typically doesn't visit with patients. And so, enabling the hospitals to have those radiologists work from home, out of harm's way, to be able to do reads is important. And so we've seen a, huge uptick in the use of that technology from customers globally. It has no geographic bounds. You need to see those images. And so, that's been kind of a cool example on the healthcare side. We've seen, customers where, in higher ed, who are used to, often still kind of laggard processes that had to work from home and now interact with students, interact with faculty, in a virtual way. And so we've seen, a customer in San Diego who stood up 20, 30 workflows in a matter of weeks, out of necessity. And so, it's been, one story after another of, people. And then I think the other thing that's happened is customers who have had legacy applications that they've been, reticent to deal with upgrades. It's going to be expensive. It's going to take time. Now are facing the reality that some of those legacy applications can't enable mobile, can't enable, a web portal, can't enable those kinds of things. And so we've been able to come in because of our low code kind of, configurable approach and allow people to literally build applications from scratch to stand in the place of, or as an intermediary to those legacy applications, enabling that customer experience through portals, through mobile, through those other means, despite the fact that the underlying infrastructure just isn't ready. And so, we've had a number of our customers, really engage with us to be able to overcome those kinds of hurdles this year.
And are there any customers in the Australian or Asia Pacific region that you want to highlight?
Well, there's a couple. I think that Hong Kong University is actually speaking at the conference, and very great example of really taking advantage of the platform. Our content services platform really enables customers to do everything from ingest information, whether it's digital or analog, in its origins, to process it, to make it viewable through third-party applications, integrated to their core, and to manage those records, up through destruction. And so, Hong Kong University is a great example. We've got a long time relationship with iCare, on the insurance side, who uses us for all of the workers' comp components, around the New South Wales workers' compensation. And so, those are a couple off the top of my head.
Sure. So, look, we've just spoken about how much change. I mean, it feels like there's been a decade of change in the last 11 months. But as we get to my last three questions, one is always how you see the industry, Hyland, and your customers evolving, through to 2030.
Well, I think that, prior to COVID, when I was out speaking to customers and speaking at events, I talked a lot about customer experience and the focus that companies needed to have, and how it was really changing the dynamic of who customers work with. And an example I would use was 20 years ago, when we selected an insurance company, we wanted somebody big and viable and financially strong and who had been around, and all those things were so important to us. But the actual experience with them kind of fell underneath that. Today, if I can interact with them through a website, a mobile app, and never talk to anybody and get my claim paid faster than the next guy, well, that's who I'm gonna use. And that's really been disruptive across many industries, and it's forced organizations to reckon with the fact that they've got to be able to provide these great customer experiences, whether that's B2B or B2C. And so I think what we're going to see over the next 10 years, especially now in light of COVID, is that becomes only more enhanced. This whole sort of, contactless way that we interact becomes germane to, everything that we expect. You think of, simple things that we were all used to, going to the movies, going to concerts, is that going to look the same after a vaccine? I don't think so. And so, when you translate that to business, how does that mean you're going to interact with your customers? It's got to be digital. It's got to be self-serve. It's got to be, contactless, because we're all learning to interact with one another very happily via these cameras, or no interaction at all, just over the web. And so, the companies are really going to have to be introspective and, reimagine, how they go to market, regardless of whether you're a manufacturer or retail, or even an area like healthcare, where, telemedicine is going to become the way people are going to consume, their healthcare, unless it's, relating to a procedure or something that just can't be done via telehealth. And so, we're working with customers to really look at that reimagined experience and try to, help them plan for the fact that it's all going to look very, very different 5 or 10 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, even telemedicine, telehealthcare is something that has been spoken about for the last 2 or 3 decades. We've had the technology to do it, but it took a global pandemic virus to make telehealth come to the fore as something that people want to do, as opposed to, oh yeah, I can do it, but I'd rather go to the doctor instead. Because we've always spoken about how, who wants to go into a waiting room full of sick people? You might infect you with something else.
Exactly.
So look, my second, yeah, please.
I think in fairness to the patients, I think, physicians also didn't love it. But I think that, the practical realities today have forced everyone to, sort of accept it.
Yeah. So my second last question is simply, if you could please share what is some of the best advice that you've received in life to help you get where you are today.
That's a great question. And, I've been very fortunate to work with a number of mentors. But, I think, my CEO, has really helped a lot. And one of the things that he said to me, very early on was, and this is going to sound unfortunately cliche, but, it's all about the customer. And, that sounds like the thing that everybody would say, but I think there are companies that say it, and then I think there are companies that do it. And, I've been fortunate. I've been at Hyland almost 20 years, and, it's been at the center of everything we do. And, often to our own, detriment in the short run, in the sense that, it's about doing what's right and understanding that, the loyalty and the, the relationship that engenders is one that will endure. And because of that, most of our relationships with our customers are decades long. And I think, that's what I would say.
Yeah. I've made this observation before in one or two other interviews where people have said sort of similar types of things, where there's a saying that if it wasn't for customers, business would be great. But then, of course, without customers, you've got no business. So they've got to be at the center of everything that you do. And there definitely are companies that pay lip service to that, and others that really mean it. And you can see that the ones who really mean it, because like you say, they've got decades-long customers. So what is your final message to iTWire viewers and readers, and to your current and future customers and partners?
Well, I think that, for Hyland, we've been around a long time. Well, next year will be our 30th anniversary. We've been fortunate to be, noted as a leader by many of the analysts, but I think, globally, we still have a way to go from a recognition standpoint. And I think, a big part of my last 7 years in the roles that I've been in has really been about trying to grow our presence, the recognition of the Hyland name and brand, outside of the U.S. And I think that, in particular, these last 9 or 10 months have been a forcing factor for companies that maybe were, hesitant to, move forward on, various transformation initiatives. And, I think as they do, they want someone who can not just say, okay, yes, I have these tools and they're going to be really helpful, but can be prescriptive in these are the ways that they're going to help your business. And these are, the things that your peers are doing. And this is how you should undertake these projects. And I think that experience in that, breadth of both functionality and customer base, and how that informs that advice, is important. And so, my hope, really is to continue to have, customers that, are in places like Australia, Japan, Singapore, Southeast Asia, really recognize what their peers have seen, on other continents, and, take this, as an opportunity to drive transformation, in their businesses. We had a customer in New Zealand, FMG, Farmers Mutual Group, and one of the quotes from their former CIO was, really referring to our product, as he used sort of the body as an analogy, and Onbase as the cardiovascular system. Not necessarily the skeleton or the bones, but providing the information out, to all of the extremities as needed. And I've always felt that, if I could have, his level of understanding of that value prop in every customer, that would go a long way to people really, embracing the technology.
I always like to think of fun ways to market something. So I've sort of been thinking, if you want to get to higher ground, go Hyland. I don't know if that's your slogan.
I appreciate that.
You can use
I like
it.
that.
Well, Ed
like
McQuiston,
that.
Executive Vice President and Chief Commercial Officer of Hyland. Have a great conference. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope we can speak again.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.